So one horrible scientific idea that wasn't scientific at all that later had scientific support is phrenology. Phrenology was basically the idea that people with differently shaped heads would have different mental skills. And there were some people who claimed to be experts in phrenology, just like there are expert astrologists today, who would measure the shape of people's heads and determine what kinds of things they were fit for. There was no evidence for the way that people were doing this, but years later there actually turned out to be a little bit of evidence for a certain kind of phrenology. Psychologists have tested this, and they were actually able to find that some traits you would be able to pick up on after looking at a picture of somebody or a video of somebody less than 5 seconds long. So with no information other than the face, people are able to detect certain characteristics. So after less than 5 seconds, you're able to tell with some degree of confidence somebody's IQ, likelihood of violence, likelihood of being exceptionally nice, their psychopathy, their extroversion, their conscientiousness, whether they're ovulating or not, and their sexual orientation. And there's a few reasons that it happens. So before going into why this works, I should also mention that almost everybody's assumptions about people based on their faces are wildly overconfident. In a lot of these studies, the researchers asked how confident people were about their assessments based on the faces that they were looking at, and almost all of them were overconfident. There are two reasons that scientists think that this might actually work. The first is chemical. Scientists have found that the shape of a face is determined to some degree by the amount of testosterone a person has. A short, wide face with a strong jawbone indicates that there is a high level of testosterone, and the opposite indicates that there is a low level of testosterone. Testosterone is linked to a ton of behavior like aggression, violence, and psychopathy. So probably part of the reason that people are able to pick up on those three traits is because they're all linked to testosterone, and the shape of the face is also linked to testosterone. People are able to tell that someone is likely to be exceptionally nice, most likely because niceness has to do with oxytocin. And oxytocin is a chemical that normally shows up when you're either in love or exceptionally happy. It corresponds to feeling really close to somebody, so it's not surprising that it has to do with niceness and generosity. However, researchers have found that people are generally able to pick up on whether somebody has specific genetic characteristics that makes them predisposed to high oxytocin levels. And this would mean that you would be able to detect from a very early age whether someone is going to be exceptionally nice or not. It's possible that some of these traits will only show up in adults. For some of the other facial characteristics, they might have to do with what exactly a person has expressed throughout their lives. So when you smile, you work out your smiling muscles, and when you frown, you work out your frowning muscles. When you work out a muscle, that muscle gets bigger, so over time, as you express different things, your face might actually shape to fit the things you're expressing. This would mean that you'd be able to pick up on someone's propensity for disgust, anger, and all sorts of things. A lot of this is actually pretty under-researched because of phrenology's reputation as a horrible pseudoscience. And this is a rightful reputation because most of the findings of phrenology were completely debunked. The methods people used to detect different characteristics based on the phrenological principles were completely wrong. So when you think you know a little bit about somebody based on their face, you can be confident that there is some degree of validation to that, but you should make sure that you realize that almost every judgment you make is more confident than it should be. So while there is scientific research that says that the shape of the face does correspond to some personality traits, you can't use it to justify a prejudice. So there's so much left to know about this kind of topic. Let me know what kind of traits you see in people in the comments. I have a few more ideas about this that I'd actually like to really test in reality, and if enough people support me on Patreon, I'll actually follow through with some of those. So there's a link to the Patreon in the description, and there's a link to all sorts of other resources that you can learn a little more about this topic. So I hope you enjoyed and learned something, and I hope you like, subscribe, and whatever. That's all.